How do you ban your own father from your wedding, then demand $190,000 from him like he is a walking wallet? Why would my son send me a bill for his party and honeymoon, then act like he did me a favor by letting me contribute? I did not argue. I just watched, took notes, and chose the one place where his plan could not survive. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible stories. My name is Gavin Cole. I am 52 years old. I run a small supply business that my father started, and I kept it alive when the market changed. I am not a loud man. I do not like drama. I like clear rules, clean numbers, and calm days. People often think calm means weak. I learned years ago that calm is just quiet control. Still, I did not expect my own son to treat me like a bank account with a pulse. It started with small things. Nolan would call me and talk fast. He would ask how work was, but he would not wait for my answer. Then he would slide into what he needed: a deposit, a booking fee, a quick transfer because a vendor wanted it today. I told myself it was wedding stress. I told myself he was young and excited. I told myself he would come back to normal after the big day. I live alone now. My house is not large, but it is paid for. My kitchen is simple: one table, 2 chairs, a clean counter, and a small window over the sink. That morning, I came in from the yard with dust on my hands and a mild ache in my shoulders. I saw a thick envelope on the table. It looked official. It had Nolan's neat handwriting on the front, like he wanted it to feel personal. For a moment, I thought it was an invitation package. I thought maybe he finally chose a date and place and wanted me to feel included. I washed my hands, dried them, and sat down. I opened the envelope slowly. What I pulled out was not an invitation, it was a bill, not a joke note, not a list of options. A real item list, line after line, with totals on the right side. Venue, planner, catering, flowers, video, music, travel, hotel nights. Then a second page for the honeymoon, flights, a suite, tours, experiences. The total was $190,000. I sat very still. I read it twice. My first thought was that they sent it to the wrong person. My second thought was that Nolan was testing me like a strange game. Then I saw the message attached at the top. It was only a few lines. Nolan wrote that he expected me to pay it. He wrote that I should be thankful he was letting me contribute. That line landed in my chest like a cold stone. Not because of the money. I could afford help. I had helped many times. It landed because of the tone. It was not a request. It was not respect. It was a command dressed in polite words. I looked around my kitchen. The clock ticked. The fridge hummed. The light from the window moved slowly across the table. Nothing else changed. But something in me shifted. Not anger, not heat. Just a quiet sense that I was standing in the wrong place in my own life. I did not call right away. I made coffee first. I took a sip and forced myself to breathe slow. I read the bill again, but this time I read it like a work order. Who asked for what? When? Why? How much? I noticed things. Many items were marked final. Many deposits were already paid. I knew those deposits came from me, because Nolan had called me for them. My phone buzzed while I was still sitting there. Nolan's name showed on the screen. The timing felt too clean, like he knew the envelope had arrived. I answered. I kept my voice even. I told him I got his envelope. Nolan did not ask what I thought. He did not ask if I was okay. He spoke like he was late for something. He said he needed confirmation by the end of the day. He said the planner needed peace of mind. He said the vendor list was locked. I asked him why he sent me a bill like this. He told me I should not take it personal. He said weddings were expensive. He said his future wife deserved the best. He said her family was watching and he could not look small. He said he was giving me a chance to be part of it. I asked him when I was supposed to attend. There was a pause, a short pause like he had practiced this part and still did not like it. He said it would be better if I did not come. I asked him to explain. He said the guest list was final. He said the day had a certain feel. He said he wanted no tension. He said it was not about me, but it was also not the time for my energy. I stared at the bill on my table. I held my cup in one hand and felt the warmth on my palm. I told him I understood. That is what I said. I did not argue. I did not plead. I did not raise my voice. Nolan sounded relieved. He talked faster. He said we could meet in public and discuss details like adults. He suggested a coffee shop downtown that he liked because it was modern and bright. He said he had a short window before another meeting. I agreed. I told him a time. I ended the call. I sat there for a long minute after the screen went dark. I cleaned my cup. I folded the bill and put it back in the envelope. I placed it in my work bag like it was a normal invoice. Then I went to my yard and did what I always do when life feels unclear. I worked. I counted stock. I checked orders. I moved boxes. I fixed a loose latch on the gate. The routine steadied me. Around noon, I got in my truck and drove to town. The coffee shop Nolan chose was one of those places with hard chairs, bright lights, and expensive pastries behind glass. The air smelled like roasted beans and sweet syrup. People sat with laptops and big headphones, like the world outside did not exist. Nolan was already there. He wore a clean jacket and a watch that looked new. He stood when he saw me, but his smile did not reach his eyes. Beside him was Brielle. She was his future wife. She looked polished. Perfect hair, perfect nails. A calm face that did not invite questions. They had drinks already. They did not ask if I wanted anything. Nolan pointed to the chair across from him like it was his meeting room. I sat down. I placed my bag beside my feet. I kept my hands on the table where they could see I was calm. Nolan started talking right away. He said he was glad I was being reasonable. He said he knew I had feelings. But this was bigger than feelings. He said this was about building a future. Brielle watched me like I was a stranger who might cause a scene. She did not greet me with warmth. She did not ask how I was. She nodded once, as if she approved that I arrived on time. Nolan pulled out a paper folder. He slid the bill across the table toward me. He tapped the total with one finger. He said this was the number we needed to clear. He said it was time to step up. I asked him again why I was not welcome to attend. Nolan leaned back. He looked around the shop for a second. It felt like he wanted the room to witness his calm. He said I was old-fashioned. He said I asked too many questions. He said I did not fit the wedding image they were going for. Brielle finally spoke. She said the day was about joy, and some people bring heavy feelings. She said it was better if I supported from a distance. She said it with a soft voice, like a helpful suggestion, not a decision that cut me out. I asked Nolan if he truly believed it was right to take my money and refuse my presence. Nolan's face tightened. He said I was making it about pride. He said a real father would want his son to have the best start. He said I should be thankful he was still giving me a role, even if I was not at the event. That was the moment I understood the shape of the problem. This was not stress. This was not confusion. This was a plan. They wanted my funds without my voice. They wanted my support without my seat. They wanted my name on payments, but not on the guest list. I looked at Nolan. I remembered him as a small boy, holding my hand in a crowded store. I remembered teaching him to ride a bike. I remembered late nights when he was sick and I stayed awake to watch his breathing. I remembered paying for school needs without making him feel small. I also saw the man in front of me now, a man who learned that charm can replace respect, a man who learned that if he sounds certain, people will move for him, a man who believed I would keep moving because I always had. I did not raise my voice. I did not call him names. I kept my tone low. I told him I needed time to review what he sent. I told him I would respond after I looked at everything. Nolan frowned. He said there was no time. He said vendors needed confirmation. He said he did not want to deal with my delays. He said he expected an answer today. Brielle added that her parents were counting on smooth planning. She said surprises were not welcome. She said this was their special season and it should not be spoiled by conflict. I nodded once. I told them I heard them. Nolan relaxed again. He took that as agreement. He started listing what they would do with the funds. He talked about the venue and the menu like it was already settled. He talked about the honeymoon like it was a reward for them, and I was the fuel. I sat through it without interrupting. I watched his hands. I watched the way Brielle leaned in when he spoke and leaned back when I spoke. I watched how they avoided the one simple truth. You do not treat family like a wallet and still call it love. When Nolan finished, he asked me to confirm the transfer. I told him I would not confirm anything in a public shop. I said I would handle it from home after I reviewed it calmly. I said that was my final answer for today. Nolan's eyes sharpened. He said I was being difficult. He said I was trying to control their day. I did not argue. I stood up. I picked up the envelope and slid it back into my bag. I looked at Nolan and told him I wanted him to have a good wedding. I told him I also wanted to be treated with basic respect. Brielle's face stayed smooth. Nolan's jaw worked like he was chewing words he did not want to say in public. I walked out of the coffee shop. The street air felt colder than before. I got into my truck and sat with both hands on the wheel. My heart was steady. My mind was clear. I drove home in silence with the bill in my bag and the sound of Nolan's voice still in my ears. After I got home, I did not throw the envelope. I did not slam doors. I did not call anyone to complain. I put the bill on my kitchen table again, under the same light where I had opened it. Then I sat down with a notebook, the kind I use for inventory counts. I wrote one question at the top. When did my son stop seeing me as his father and start seeing me as a tool? I met Nolan's mother when we were young. We built a simple life. It was not fancy, but it was steady. I worked long weeks. I missed some fun things, but I was there for the important parts. Nolan grew up with rules and routines. He had clean clothes. He had school supplies before the first day. He had rides to practice. I was not perfect, but I was present. When Nolan was a teenager, he had a loud phase. He tested limits. That was normal. I stayed calm. I kept my promises. Over time, he learned that I meant what I said. We had a decent relationship. He would come to me when he needed advice, even if he did not admit it. When he went to college, I helped where I could. I paid for books more than once. I covered a short rent gap when he had a late paycheck. I did it quietly. I did not want him to feel like he was always in debt to me. I wanted him to stand on his own, not to kneel. After college, he bounced between jobs. He said he was finding himself. I listened. I encouraged him. I also saw that he liked comfort. He liked being taken care of, even while he said he was independent. Then he met Brielle. At first, I was happy for him. He sounded excited on the phone. He talked about her like she was bright and motivated. He said she had a strong family. He said she had standards. That word showed up a lot. The first time I met her, I tried to keep it light. We met at a family restaurant on a Sunday. Nolan chose the place. It was a place with cloth napkins and soft music, where people sit up straight. He showed up early, like he wanted to control the space before I arrived. Brielle was polite, but distant. She asked what I did for work, but her eyes drifted away while I answered. She looked past me sometimes, like she was checking the room. Nolan watched her face more than he watched mine. When I asked Nolan about his job, he gave short answers. When Brielle spoke, Nolan leaned forward like every word mattered. That day, I offered to pay for lunch. Nolan let me. He did not say thank you. He just nodded, as if it was the normal way of things. A few weeks later, Nolan called me and said Brielle's parents wanted to meet. He said they were traditional. He said they cared about presentation. I heard another word, too. Impression. We met in a bright cafe near their side of town. Her father spoke like a manager. He asked what my plans were for Nolan's future. Her mother asked what kind of wedding we could support. They spoke in calm voices, but the meaning was clear. They were measuring me. I kept my answers simple. I told them Nolan was an adult. I told them I loved him and wanted him happy. I said I would help where it made sense. I did not make big promises in a first meeting. On the way home, Nolan called me again. He sounded tense. He said I should have been more enthusiastic. He said her parents wanted to feel secure. He said I had made things awkward by being too careful. That was new. Nolan used to respect careful. After that, the money requests started to come with pressure. Nolan did not ask the way he used to. He started stating needs like deadlines were my fault. He would call and say a deposit was due, and he needed it done now. If I asked what it was for, he acted like the question itself was a problem. Once he called while I was loading pallets at my yard. I had dust on my hands and sweat on my neck. He said the photographer had a date open, but only if they paid that afternoon. He said this was not the time to think. He said it was the time to act. I told him I needed the vendor name and the exact amount before I sent anything. He went quiet for a moment, then said I was slowing everything down. He said Brielle was upset. He said her mother was starting to wonder. I sent the deposit after I got the details. I did it because I still believed I was helping my son build a life, not buying access to his attention. Another time, Nolan asked me to cover a small upgrade for the venue. He said it was for better lighting and a larger room. He said it would help photos look more high-end. I asked if he had asked Brielle's parents to cover it. Nolan said they had already done enough. Then he added that I should not compare, because this was my chance to show pride. That word again. Pride. As if pride was a payment method. As the months passed, Nolan stopped coming by my house. When he did come, it was short and focused. He would sit on the edge of a chair like he was at a meeting. He would check his phone often. He would talk about plans, not about life. I tried to invite him to small things, a simple dinner, a weekend coffee, a quick visit to the yard. He always had reasons. He was busy. Brielle was tired. They had family events. They had tastings. They had meetings. I noticed that family events never included me. There was one Sunday lunch that made it plain. I had been invited to a family meal at a restaurant again. Nolan said it would be good for everyone to connect. When I arrived, I saw Brielle's parents already seated at a large table. There were extra people, too, a few relatives from their side. A couple I did not know. It felt like a presentation, not a meal. Nolan greeted them warmly. He greeted me quickly. Brielle kissed Nolan's cheek and then gave me a small smile. Her mother spoke first and asked about the wedding budget as if it was a group project. She listed costs like she had them memorized. She spoke about the planner's schedule. She spoke about vendors needing certainty. I listened. Then I asked one simple question. I asked if the guest list was set. Brielle's mother said it was being refined. Nolan said it was almost final. Brielle said they wanted a clean feel, not crowded, not complicated. Then I heard Nolan explain me to someone at the table. He described me as helping behind the scenes. He said it like that was my role. Not father of the groom, not family, just support staff. I did not react. I did not make a face. I kept my posture steady. Inside, I felt something go cold again. After that lunch, I started noticing smaller cuts. I would hear about wedding updates from other people, not from Nolan. A cousin would ask if I was excited for the date, and I would realize I was not sure what the date was. A neighbor would mention seeing an engagement photo online, and I would learn about it after the fact. I followed Nolan on social media, not because I like it, but because it was one way to stay connected. I saw posts with captions about chosen family and fresh starts. I saw pictures of dinners with Brielle's parents. I saw group photos with wide smiles. I was never in the frame. One evening, I got a message from my sister, Mara. She asked if I had seen a post where Nolan thanked everyone who made this possible. I had not seen it yet. I looked. Nolan thanked Brielle. He thanked her parents. He thanked the planner. He thanked friends. He did not mention me. Mara called me after. She said Nolan was acting like I was a funding line, not a person. She said I should be careful. She said people who learn they can push you will keep pushing until you stop them. I told her I did not want conflict. I told her I just wanted a relationship with my son. Mara said I could want that and still protect myself. My younger son, Eli, noticed too. Eli is quieter than Nolan. He watches more than he speaks. He came by my place one night to drop off a tool he borrowed. He asked if Nolan had invited me to the wedding planning dinner at Brielle's parents' house. I told him I had not heard about it. Eli paused, then said Nolan had been talking about it like it was a big moment. Eli said Nolan sounded proud that the families were aligning. Then Eli added that Nolan spoke about me like I was a sponsor. I asked Eli what he meant. Eli said Nolan used the word in front of friends. He said Nolan made it sound normal, like a role in a project. Eli said he did not like it. Eli said he wanted me to know. That night, after Eli left, I stood in my kitchen and looked at the empty chair across from mine. I remembered how Nolan used to sit there when he was younger, eating fast and talking about school. I remembered the sound of his laugh before he learned to manage his image. I also remembered the coffee shop meeting earlier that day when Nolan slid a bill toward me like it was a reasonable thing to do. I opened my phone and searched my messages with Nolan. I did not read them with emotion. I read them like a timeline. I saw a pattern. Each message that included warmth was followed by a request. Each time I asked a question, the tone tightened. Each time I delayed, he used pressure words. By the end of the night, I had a list in my notebook. Not a plan, just facts. Dates of deposits, names of vendors he mentioned. Moments where I was left out. Moments where I was spoken about like an accessory. I sat back and held the pen in my hand. I felt tired, but clear. The next day would not fix this. A nice dinner would not fix this. A gentle talk would not fix this. Because this was not a misunderstanding anymore. This was a decision they had already made about who I was allowed to be. My next morning started like any other workday. I opened the yard gate early. I checked deliveries. I answered 2 calls from suppliers. I tried to keep my mind on tasks I could control, but the bill was still on my kitchen table at home. The memory of that coffee shop meeting stayed with me. Nolan's calm face, Brielle's quiet approval, the way they spoke like I was a tool, not a father. Around mid-morning, my phone lit up again. Nolan sent a short message. He said the planner needed confirmation today. He said I should not contact vendors. He said I would only confuse people and cause problems. I stared at the screen. I did not reply right away. I went back to stacking boxes, but my focus was gone. It was not even the demand that bothered me most. It was the control. He wanted my money to move fast, but he wanted my questions to move nowhere. I took a break and sat on an old chair in my yard office. The room smelled like paper and dust. I opened my notebook again and wrote another line under the first question. What exactly is connected to my name? I am careful with money. I do not let others link my accounts to their plans without clear limits. Yet my phone had been getting reminders with my name in the subject line. That was not normal. Nolan made it sound like I was only being asked to pay, but the way the emails were written felt like I was already listed as the payer. so I decided to go to the bank. I did not do it to cause trouble. I did it because I needed facts. Facts calm me. Facts do not change with mood. Facts do not care about family pressure. The bank lobby was quiet and bright. People spoke in low voices. Pens were chained to little stands. A small line moved slowly. I waited, then sat with a banker at a desk near a window. I kept my voice steady. I said my name. I said I had been receiving payment reminders for wedding vendors, and I wanted to understand why. I said I did not want surprises. The banker listened and nodded. She asked for my identification. She typed for a while. Then she asked a few careful questions. She asked if I had ever authorized a third party to initiate payments. She asked if I had ever signed anything related to vendor billing, even as a backup payer. She said those terms were often used in event planning. I told her I had sent deposits directly in the past, but I had not agreed to open-ended charges. I told her I was not trying to stop anything. I simply needed clarity. She clicked through more screens and turned the monitor slightly away, like it was private even from me. Then she leaned forward and explained something that made my stomach tighten. She said my name was attached to a payment profile connected to multiple vendors. She said some of it looked like simple payee setup, but some of it looked like permissions that could allow charges under certain conditions. She did not say it like an accusation. She said it like a warning people usually ignore until it is too late. I asked how that could happen without me noticing. She said it could happen in several ways. She said sometimes people approve something quickly on a phone screen and do not read the fine details. She said sometimes a planner sets up billing with a primary and a secondary payer, and the secondary does not realize what they agreed to. She said sometimes it was done through third-party payment services that use saved authorizations. I felt my face stay calm, but my mind sharpened. I thought about Nolan's rushed calls. The moments he said this was not the time to think, the times he asked me to confirm something right now because a vendor needed it. I remembered clicking through links while standing in my yard with dusty hands, trusting my son. I asked the banker what I could do to protect myself while I sorted it out. She told me I could request a full list of connected payees and authorizations tied to my accounts. She said I could ask for a history of changes and any linked profiles. She said if I felt uneasy, I could place limitations depending on the setup. I told her I wanted a full list and a clear history. I told her I wanted it in writing, sealed, so I could review it carefully later. She nodded again and said it would take some time to compile. She said she could start the request and notify me when it was ready. As she spoke, my phone vibrated on the desk. Nolan's name appeared. The timing was almost perfect, like he could sense I was doing something he did not approve of. I did not answer in the bank. I let it ring out. I did not want my voice to change in public. I did not want to react quickly. I wanted to stay in control of my tone. When I left the bank, I walked slowly to my truck. The air outside felt colder than inside, but it cleared my head. I sat behind the wheel and stared forward for a moment, hands resting at the bottom of it. Nolan called again. I answered this time. He did not ask where I was. He did not ask if I was okay. He went straight into pressure. He said the planner told him I was asking questions. He said I was making things difficult. He said I was embarrassing him. He said I needed to stop and just do what was expected. I kept my voice low. I told him I had the right to understand anything tied to my name. I told him I was not making a scene. I was simply getting clarity. He said I was overthinking. He said I always had to complicate things. He said I should focus on being supportive. I told him support without respect was not support. I told him I would respond when I had complete information. I told him I would not be rushed. There was a pause. Then his tone shifted into something colder. He said I was acting like I had power over their day. He said I should remember I was not invited, and I should not try to insert myself. He said if I caused problems, I would be blamed. I listened without interrupting. When he finished, I said I understood what he was saying. Then I ended the call. I did not feel angry. I felt clear. I drove to a park trail outside town, the kind with trees and a long gravel path. I parked and sat there with the engine off. The quiet was real. No phones ringing, no vendors, no family voices. Just wind-moving leaves. I thought about all the moments I had stayed silent to keep peace. I thought about how often peace meant I gave up ground. I thought about the pattern I saw in my message history. Warmth, then request. Praise, then pressure. Calm words, then control. And I finally admitted something I had tried not to admit. They did not want me as a father. They wanted me as a resource. That was the line. That was the moment the fog lifted. I did not make a dramatic promise. I did not imagine speeches. I simply decided I was done participating in a setup that treated me like a tool. I went back to my yard after that. I worked for another hour, but my body was on autopilot. My mind was organizing. Later in the afternoon, I went home and sat at my kitchen table again. I opened my laptop. I created a folder with a simple name, the kind I use for tax documents. Inside it, I made subfolders by month. I started pulling every message thread with Nolan that mentioned money, deadlines, and vendors. I did not read the messages like a wounded man. I read them like a manager reviewing a project that was going off track. I noted dates. I noted amounts. I noted who started each request. I noted the moments when he told me not to ask questions. I saved screenshots, not to use against him in anger, but to preserve what was real. People rewrite things when it benefits them. Screenshots do not rewrite themselves. I also checked my email. I searched words like deposit, vendor, planner, and confirmation. I found messages that had slipped past my attention because I trusted Nolan to handle the details. Some emails were short, some were long, several had the same kind of language. They did not ask if I would pay, they assumed I would pay. I saw my name listed in places I did not remember placing it. I leaned back in my chair and looked at the ceiling for a few seconds. My breathing stayed slow. I was not shocked anymore. I was only gathering facts. That evening, my sister Mara came by. She did not call first. She just showed up with a bag of groceries like she knew I had not been eating well. She put the bag on the counter and looked at the envelope on the table. She asked what happened. I told her the simple version. I told her Nolan banned me from the wedding, then demanded a huge payment and acted like it was normal. Mara's face tightened. She said she was not surprised. She said she had watched Nolan change for months. She said Brielle's parents treated the whole wedding like a public performance. She said Nolan was trying to prove he belonged. I told her I was not trying to ruin anyone's day. I was trying to stop being treated like a payment machine. Mara nodded and said I needed to protect myself properly. She said I should not argue in the family group chats. She said I should not raise my voice at dinner. She said people would twist it. She said I should do everything clean and quiet. I told her that was exactly what I intended. After Mara left, I went to my small home office. I pulled out an old USB drive from a drawer, one I used for work backups. I plugged it in and copied the folder I had made. I labeled it with a date. Then I removed it and placed it in a plain envelope. I also took my paper notebook and rewrote my list neatly on fresh pages. I wrote a timeline. I wrote what happened, when it happened, and what was said. No emotion words, no guesses, just facts. When I finished, I put the notebook in a drawer and closed it carefully. Before bed, I checked my phone one more time. There were 3 missed calls from Nolan and 2 short messages. He said the deadline was still today. He said I was making him look bad. He said I should remember who was being celebrated. I did not reply. I turned off the light in my kitchen, left the bill on the table, and walked down the hall. I lay down and stared into the dark for a long time. I did not feel like a man who lost. I felt like a man who finally stopped pretending this was normal. The next few days felt slow on the outside and fast in my head. I still opened my yard early. I still answered calls. I still moved stock and signed delivery slips. But every quiet moment, I kept seeing that total on the paper. Not the number itself, the meaning behind it. I did not want to fight with Nolan in public. I did not want to send long messages that could be copied and twisted. I wanted clarity and clean boundaries. So I did what I always do when a project starts to look unsafe. I checked the structure, I checked the rules, I checked who had access. One afternoon, I drove to the planner's studio. I did not show up angry. I booked a short meeting like a normal person. The building was modern and smelled like candles. There were sample folders on a shelf and photos of smiling couples on the wall. A young assistant offered me water and told me to wait. When the planner came out, she greeted me with a smooth voice. She spoke like she had a schedule in her head that never stopped. She said she had only a few minutes. She asked what I needed. I told her I had been receiving reminders about payments. I said I wanted to understand what was expected from me and what was linked to my name. I kept my tone calm. I did not mention the wedding ban yet. I wanted to see how she handled a simple question. She smiled, but it was not a warm smile. She said it was all standard. She said families often help. She said it was normal for a parent to take care of the big costs. She said the couple had selected premium options and those required fast deposits. I asked her which vendors had my name connected as payer. Her smile tightened. She said she did not want to overwhelm me with details. She said the couple managed communication. She said the best way to help was to follow the plan and send what Nolan requested. I asked again, more clearly. I said I wanted a list of vendors that expected funds from me, and I wanted to know if any account profiles used my information. Her posture changed. She leaned back and spoke slower, like she was talking to a child. She said she could not share internal vendor notes. She said she could not change the system for one person. She said if I had concerns, I should speak to Nolan. I nodded. I told her I was not asking for private notes. I was asking what was tied to my name. I told her that was a normal question. I said I would not approve anything I could not review. At that, she became more direct. She said delays could cause the couple to lose bookings. She said that would create stress. She said I did not want to be the reason the day became complicated. I heard the same pressure words again, the same pattern. Make the request, then put fear around it, then call it support. I did not argue. I thanked her for her time. I stood up, shook her hand, and walked out. In my truck, I sat for a minute and let the quiet settle. I did not feel defeated. I felt confirmed. People who respect you do not hide basic information from you. That evening, I went back to my kitchen and opened my laptop again. I did not print anything new. I did not spread papers across the table like a dramatic scene. I simply kept building my timeline. I searched my email for the planner's domain. I found threads where I was copied without noticing. Some messages were short reminders. Some were updates that talked about confirmed payer. I saved them into my folder by month. I also saved the message where Nolan told me not to contact vendors because it showed control. I saved everything the same way I save business records. Clean names, clear dates. The next morning, my sister Mara invited me over. Her living room was warm and quiet, full of ordinary things that made the world feel steady. She made tea and sat across from me like she was preparing for a serious talk. She said she heard from a cousin that I was not going to the wedding. She asked if it was true. I told her yes. I told her Nolan said it would be better if I stayed away. I told her he still wanted me to pay. Mara exhaled through her nose and shook her head once. She said Nolan had been acting like he was running a campaign. She said he was chasing approval from people who measure love with photos and guest lists. She said he was letting them rewrite his priorities. I told her I did not want to punish him. I told her I only wanted basic respect. Mara said respect is not something you beg for. She said you set rules and let people meet them or not. She said if Nolan wanted to treat me like a payment source, then I needed to treat the situation like a business risk. That word fit. Risk. I told her I had gone to the bank and requested a full list of any linked payees and permissions tied to my accounts. I told her I was organizing messages and dates. I told her I was not going to argue in family chats. Mara nodded. She said I should also keep my face calm in public. She said people like Nolan and his new circle rely on an image of you. She said if I looked emotional, they would label me. She said if I looked steady, they would not know where to land. Before I left, she asked me one more question. She asked if I had spoken to someone who understands contracts. I told her I had made a quiet call to someone I trust. I did not share details. I simply said I was handling it properly. On my way home, my phone rang again. It was Eli. He said he did not want to add stress, but he needed to tell me something. He said Nolan had been telling friends that I was stepping up in a big way. He said Nolan sounded proud of the amount, like it proved something. Eli said he heard Nolan say I would not be at the event because I preferred it that way. That part stung more than the bill. It was not just exclusion. It was a story being built around it, a story where I agreed to disappear. I thanked Eli for telling me. I told him I was okay. I told him to stay out of the middle unless he needed to protect himself. Eli said he understood. He said he just wanted me to know what was being said. That night, I went into my home office and opened my calendar. I do not use it for fun. I use it to keep my life in order. I added every date Nolan had mentioned: deposit deadlines, meetings, the venue walkthrough, the final week schedule. Then I did something I had not done before. I circled one date in red: the venue walkthrough meeting. It was not even the wedding day. It was the last point where all the key people would be in one place with vendors and managers present. It was the last point where decisions became official. I did not think of it as a stage. I thought of it as a control point. Over the next few days, Nolan continued to push. His messages stayed short and sharp. He said he was tired of my slow pace. He said I was risking the whole event. He said I needed to trust him and stop asking questions. I replied only once. I told him I was reviewing everything and I would respond through proper channels. I kept it short. I did not explain. I did not defend. Long explanations are a gift to people who want to twist your words. Then the planner sent a new email. It was a meeting notice. It listed a date and time. It listed the venue conference room. It listed final walkthrough. It included the planner, the venue manager, catering, music, and several other vendors. It also included Nolan and Brielle, plus her parents. My name appeared on the list too, not as a guest, not as family, as the person connected to payments. I leaned back in my chair and looked at the screen. I could almost hear the tone Nolan would use when he saw me there. He would act surprised, he would act annoyed, he would try to frame me as a problem. But the truth was simple. They scheduled the meeting. They included my name. They built the process around me and then tried to remove me as a person. I printed the meeting notice, not to wave it around, but to mark it. The printer sound filled my small office for a few seconds. I picked up the paper and placed it in a folder. I labeled the folder with the same plain style I use for work. Then I turned off the office light and stood in the doorway for a moment. My house was quiet. The kind of quiet that lets you hear your own thoughts clearly. I was not planning a scene, I was preparing for a procedure, and for the first time in weeks, I felt steady enough to sleep. The day after the planner meeting, I woke up before my alarm. My body did that when something important was coming. I lay in bed for a minute and listened to the house. The heat clicked on. Pipes made a soft sound. Outside, a car passed on the street, tires on cold pavement. I got up, made plain coffee, and ate a piece of toast without tasting it. Then I opened my notebook and looked at the red circle on my calendar. The venue walkthrough meeting was close. It was the last point where the whole machine would be in the same room. Nolan, Brielle, her parents, the planner, the venue manager, and vendors. All the people who like to speak in process language and hide behind polite faces. I drove to my yard and worked a full morning. I kept my hands busy because busy hands keep my mind from running in circles. But at lunch, I sat in my small office with the door closed and made one quiet call. It was to Ms. Patel. I had met her years ago through a business contact. She was steady and blunt in the right way. She did not chase feelings, she chased facts. That is what I needed. Her office was on the second floor of an older building downtown. The hallway smelled like paper and floor cleaner. Her receptionist greeted me with a calm smile and asked me to take a seat. There were framed certificates on the wall and a small bowl of mints on the table. I did not take one. When Ms. Patel came out, she did not waste time. She asked me to tell her what happened in simple order. I gave her the timeline without extra words. The bill, the coffee shop meeting, the wedding exclusion, the pressure messages, the payment reminders, the bank visit, the planner's refusal to share basic details. She listened without interrupting. She made a few notes. Then she asked short questions. Who sent what? When? What were the exact amounts? Which vendors were named? Were there any links or approvals I had clicked under pressure? Had I ever agreed to be a backup payer? Did I have proof of the exclusion and proof of the demand for payment? I told her I had everything saved and backed up. I told her I did not want to cause a loud scene. I told her I wanted a clean, lawful boundary. She nodded and said that was the right approach. She said people who rely on pressure often fall apart when you move into clear systems. She said the key was to stay factual and avoid emotional bargaining. She said the other side would try to make it personal, because personal is easier to twist than procedure. I left her office feeling calmer, not because anything was solved yet, but because I was not alone with it. I did not need to win a shouting match. I needed to protect myself in a way that could not be argued away by charm. On the way home, I stopped by the bank to pick up the information I had requested. I did not open anything there. I simply thanked the banker and placed the sealed envelope into my work bag. I drove home with both hands steady on the wheel. That evening, I sat at my kitchen table and looked at the stack of ordinary items that now carried weight. My notebook, a folder with printed emails, the planner meeting notice, the big bill, the sealed bank envelope, the USB drive in its plain sleeve. I did not spread them out like a show. I kept them neat. I set them aside after a quick review, then cleaned the kitchen like normal. I wiped the counter. I washed dishes. I took out the trash. Quiet chores help me stay grounded. They remind me that I still control my own home. Nolan kept pushing. His messages came in bursts, mostly late afternoon and late night, like he was bracing himself for answers and did not like silence. He told me the venue needed final confirmation. He told me the planner was frustrated. He told me Brielle was stressed. He told me I was creating problems again. He also tried a softer approach for one day. He sent a message saying he missed when things were simple between us. He said he wished I could just support him like a real father should. He said he did not want the wedding to be about conflict. I read it once and did not respond. That kind of message is a trap. It sounds warm, but it still tries to push you into a role. If I replied with feelings, he could turn it into a fight. If I replied with reasons, he could call it excuses. I replied only with logistics when I had to. I told him I would attend the walkthrough meeting because my name was attached to the payment side of the process. I told him I would speak calmly and keep it professional. I told him I would not argue in public. His reply came fast. He said I was not welcome. He said I would embarrass him. He said he would tell security to keep me out if I showed up. That one made me pause, not because I believed he had that power, but because it showed how far he was willing to go to control the story. He wanted my money and my silence. He wanted my absence to look like my choice. I did not argue. I placed the phone face down and went to bed early. 2 days before the walkthrough meeting, I got another email notice with the vendor list attached. I did not open it right away. I waited until I had time to read it slowly. When I did, I noticed something small but important. The planner had included my name again in the payment confirmation section, not as a guest, not as father of the groom, as payer. I forwarded that email to myself in a separate folder and saved it. Then I printed it and placed it behind the meeting notice. I did it the same way I file supplier agreements at my yard. If a situation becomes complicated later, the first version matters. The day before the walkthrough meeting, Eli called me. He asked if I was okay. I told him I was fine. I told him I was handling it properly. He hesitated, then said Nolan was telling people that I was acting unstable about money. He said Nolan was hinting that I had promised support, and then pulled back for no reason. Eli said a few friends sounded uncomfortable, but they were still listening to Nolan because Nolan sounded confident. I thanked Eli for telling me. I told him not to fight with Nolan. I told him to protect his own peace. Eli said he understood, and he said he would be around at the hotel during the wedding weekend in case I needed a calm face nearby. That night, I packed a small overnight bag. Not because I planned to attend the wedding, I did not have a seat. But the walkthrough meeting was scheduled at the venue, and the weekend traffic in town gets messy during big events. I wanted to move on my own schedule. I booked a room at the hotel where Nolan's group was staying. It was easier to be close and not rush. The hotel lobby the next afternoon was full of flowers and rolling luggage. People wore nice clothes even while checking in, like the whole weekend was a stage. The front desk staff smiled and greeted guests with practiced warmth. I waited in line and kept my posture relaxed. When it was my turn, the clerk asked my name. I gave it. She typed and looked at the screen for a beat too long. Then her smile changed slightly. Not rude, just careful. She said my room was confirmed. She slid a key card across the counter. She told me the elevator direction. As I turned to leave, I saw Nolan across the lobby. He was with Brielle and her parents. They were speaking with the planner near a seating area, heads close together, like they were the board of a small company. Nolan spotted me. His face tightened in a way that told me he had not expected me there. Brielle's eyes went to my bag, then to my face, then away. Her mother stared as if she was calculating. Her father took a step forward, then stopped, like he did not want to be seen approaching me first. Nolan walked over with a controlled smile. He spoke in a low voice and asked what I was doing there. He said I was not part of the weekend plan. He said he did not want any disruptions. I kept my voice even. I told him I had a room because the walkthrough meeting was scheduled and my name was listed in the payment section. I told him I would keep things calm and professional. I told him I would not argue in the lobby. His jaw moved as if he wanted to say more. Then he looked around at people walking by and adjusted himself. He said he would talk to me later. He said I needed to remember what day it was about. I nodded and walked to the elevator without reacting. In my room, I set my bag down and sat on the edge of the bed for a moment. The room smelled like clean sheets and hotel soap. I looked out the window at the parking lot and the slow traffic below. I was not there to beg for a seat. I was not there to force my way into photos. I was there to protect myself with calm procedure. I ate a simple dinner alone that night, then went back to my room and reviewed my notes one more time. I checked my folder, made sure everything was saved and backed up, and placed the USB drive in my inner jacket pocket. I set my phone to silent. I set 2 alarms. I slept lightly. The morning of the walkthrough meeting, the lobby was even busier. Vendors rolled carts. People carried garment bags. The air smelled like coffee and perfume. Nolan's group moved through the space like they owned it. I kept to myself. I did not approach Brielle's parents. I did not chase Nolan. I took my time, walked outside, and sat in my truck for 10 minutes before the meeting. I watched people enter the venue across the street. I watched the doors open and close. I watched the planner's assistant hurry with a clipboard. My heart stayed steady. My mind stayed quiet. This was not a battle. It was a boundary. When it was time, I walked to the venue and entered through the main doors. The hallway leading to the conference room was cool and clean, with framed photos of past events on the walls. I could hear voices through the door ahead, low and overlapping. I paused, adjusted my jacket, and opened the door. Inside, a long table filled the room. Name cards were placed in front of chairs. The planner sat near the center with her folder open. The venue manager sat at the end with a laptop. Vendors sat on both sides with pens in hand. Nolan and Brielle sat together. Her parents sat close, shoulders squared, faces ready. My name card was there too, placed near the payment section on the agenda. I took a seat without speaking first and looked at the table like a man arriving for a meeting that had been scheduled with my name already on it. The planner started the meeting with her practiced smile. She thanked everyone for coming. She said the goal was to confirm final details and make sure the weekend ran smoothly. She said this was the last walkthrough before everything became fixed. The venue manager introduced himself and said he needed 3 things before the venue could guarantee anything. He said he needed final headcount, final timeline, and final payment confirmation. He said the venue could not hold staff and space without clear approval on the payment side. Nolan sat upright and nodded like he owned the room. Brielle sat close to him and kept her hands folded. Her mother watched the table as if she was checking who mattered. Her father looked relaxed, but his eyes moved fast. The planner moved down her agenda. She asked catering about food timing. She asked the music vendor about setup. She asked the video team about power outlets. Everyone answered and took notes. Nolan made small comments to show he was involved. Brielle smiled at the right times. Her parents added little helpful notes as if they were the real hosts. Then the planner reached the part labeled payment confirmation. She glanced at me and said my name in a professional tone. She said she was glad I came. She said she needed me to confirm the remaining amount and confirm that any last-minute vendor upgrades would still be covered. Nolan's face tightened. He turned toward me and asked what I was doing here. He said I was not supposed to attend anything. He said I was trying to make it about me. I kept my hands on the table. I kept my voice low. I said I came because my name was on the payment section of the agenda and on vendor reminders. I said I had the right to understand what was connected to my accounts. I said I would keep it calm and professional. The planner tried to smooth it over. She said it was a simple confirmation. She said this was not the time for questions. She said vendors needed confidence. Brielle's mother added that the day was important and that disruptions were not welcome. She said everyone should focus on joy. I nodded once. I said I agreed that the weekend should be smooth. I said that was why I needed to correct the process now, while all decision-makers were present. The venue manager leaned forward. He asked what I meant by correct. He said he needed clarity because staffing decisions depended on payment approval. I reached into my bag and placed a folder on the table. The sound was small, but the room went quiet anyway. I opened the folder and slid one paper forward, face up, so it was visible to the venue manager and the planner. I said Nolan had sent me a bill for $190,000. I said he also told me I was not welcome at the wedding. I said I did not argue with him. I said I simply reviewed what was happening. I said I needed the room to understand the full picture before anyone assumed I was confirming anything. Nolan leaned in and said I was being dramatic. He said I should stop trying to embarrass him. He said this was family and it should stay private. I looked at him and kept my tone steady. I said he made it public when he turned support into a demand and used vendors to apply pressure. I said I did not come to fight. I said I came to set a clear boundary in the same system they were using to push me. The planner tried to redirect. She said the bill was not her focus. She said her focus was the event. She said she needed a yes or no. I said she would get a clear answer. I said the answer depended on the truth being acknowledged. I placed a second set of pages on the table, still calm. I said these were message screenshots and email threads that showed repeated pressure, tight deadlines, and reminders listing me as payer. I said I was not showing them to shame anyone. I said I was showing them because people often change their story later. Brielle's father cleared his throat and said the money was a separate matter. He said we could talk in the hallway. He said it was not appropriate to bring private family issues into a vendor meeting. I said I respected the desire for privacy. I said I also respected the vendor's need to know who would pay. I said this meeting was already about payment. I said I would not step into a hallway where words could be denied. I said everything I said would be calm, brief, and factual. The venue manager nodded slowly. He said he agreed that payer authority was relevant. He said he needed to know who could approve charges today. I then took out the sealed bank envelope and opened it. I did it carefully, like opening a business statement. I pulled out the pages and placed them in front of me. I did not wave them. I did not raise my voice. I simply read from them in short lines. I said the bank confirmed my accounts had a payment profile connected to multiple wedding vendors. I said the profile included permissions that could allow charges under certain conditions. I said I did not agree to open-ended charges. I said I had clicked links in the past under pressure and trusted it was limited. I said the structure was not acceptable to me anymore. The planner's face changed. She looked at the pages, then looked at Nolan. Nolan stared back as if he wanted her to fix it with a smile. Brielle's mother said I was trying to sabotage the weekend. She said I was doing it because I was upset about not being invited. She said I was punishing my own child. I kept my tone level. I said I did not punish anyone. I said I was correcting a mismatch. I said, if I was not welcome as family, then I would not be used as a funding source. I said it was that simple. Nolan said I was twisting things. He said I was not banned. He said it was just better if I stayed away for comfort reasons. He said I should still contribute, because that was what fathers do. I slid one more page forward. It was a printed message. I said this message showed he told me not to attend and that the guest list was final. I said this message also showed he demanded the full amount by a deadline. I said I did not add emotion to it. I said the words spoke for themselves. The room stayed quiet. Vendors shifted in their chairs. The catering manager looked down at her notes and stopped writing. The music vendor looked at the planner and then at the venue manager, like he was waiting for a decision. The venue manager asked a direct question. He asked if I was confirming payment today. I said no. I said I was withdrawing my approval for any future charges tied to my accounts for this event. I said I would not fund a wedding I was not allowed to attend. I said I would not approve upgrades, extras, or any last-minute charges, because the structure had been used to pressure me. I said I was doing it through proper channels and with legal support. Then I placed the final document on the table, Ms. Patel's letter. The paper was clean and direct. It stated that any authorization linked to my accounts was withdrawn effective immediately and that vendors were not approved to charge anything further. It also stated that any billing questions should be directed to Nolan or to the party who signed as primary client. The planner reached for it, then hesitated. The venue manager took it and read it quietly. His face stayed professional. Then he set it down and looked at Nolan. He said the venue could not proceed without a confirmed payer on file. He said if Nolan or another responsible party wanted to assume payment, the venue needed a new signed payer form today. He said if no one signed, the venue would release holds and stop guaranteeing staff levels and timing. The planner turned to Nolan fast. She said this was serious. She said they needed a solution now. She said vendors would not wait. Nolan looked at Brielle, then at her parents. Brielle's smile disappeared. Her mother leaned toward her father and spoke in a low voice. Her father's relaxed look was gone now. He asked Nolan what he had told me and what he had promised vendors. Nolan did not answer him right away. Brielle's mother then turned to me and said I was being cruel. She said I should not do this days before the wedding. She said I should be ashamed. She said family does not do this. I did not react to the words. I simply said family also does not send a bill with a demand and then remove a father from the guest list. I said I did not create this problem. I said I was ending my involvement in a setup that was built on pressure and silence. The venue manager slid a clipboard across the table toward Nolan. He said if Nolan wanted to keep the venue schedule intact, he needed a new payer signature and an updated payment method now. He said vendors would also need updated confirmation. He said the meeting could pause for 10 minutes, but not longer because other events were waiting behind them. Nolan's hands moved toward the clipboard, then stopped. He looked around the table and realized everyone was watching, not with sympathy, with practical attention. The kind of attention that comes when money is not a story anymore. It is a requirement. The planner said she would call the vendors one by one if needed. She said she needed names and a payment source. She said she could not hold things together without it. Brielle's father stood up slightly, then sat back down. He said they needed to talk as a family. He said they needed privacy for a moment. The venue manager said he understood, but he repeated that the venue needed a signed payer now. I sat back in my chair and kept my hands folded. I did not smile. I did not argue. I simply stayed quiet and let the system speak. Nolan stared at the clipboard. His face went pale. He opened his mouth like he wanted to say something to me, then stopped. The words he normally used did not fit in this room anymore. The venue manager tapped the clipboard once, gently, like closing a discussion. He said he needed the new payer's signature to proceed. He said otherwise the venue would release the holds immediately. Nolan reached for the pen, but his fingers did not close around it. He looked at his future in-laws again, waiting for someone else to carry the weight he had pushed onto me. No one moved fast enough. The room stayed silent. The planner's folder sat open like a paused machine, and the clipboard remained on the table, waiting for a signature that did not come.